Yes, sir.
Okay, so I hope all of you have this code book IS 456 with you. So you would have used this in concrete technology, but you may not have used it entirely. Okay. So in fact, you read the title of this code book. It is plain and reinforced concrete code of practice. Okay, so it is plain and reinforced concrete. So probably just to study the properties of plain concrete, about what are the different mixes, how to take the different aspects related to the mix design. You might have just used this, but otherwise for reinforced concrete, how to use it you will not be aware yet. So I'll just kind of go through what is there in this code book. So what you would have probably used before is only section 1 and section 2. Okay, so you might have used this just to get what the desirable qualities of all these materials are. Cement, admixtures, aggregates, reinforcement. Maybe you may not have seen, but otherwise you would have seen all of this. You might have learned what the grades of concrete are, what the properties are, mix proportioning. What is the design mix? What's a volume mix? By the way, what is a design mix and what is a volume mix? Sorry, nominal mix. Does anyone remember that? What is a design mix and what is a nominal mix?
So for nominal mix, we have like standard proportion, like 1:1.5.
That is called as what mix?
Nominal mix.
Okay, how about a design mix?
Design you like design for a particular thing, maybe like you add admixtures and everything and you put into it.
Okay, so generally, what grade of concrete till what grade of concrete you can do a nominal mix? In general. So
M20.
M20. So till M20 you can add up nominal mixes, and beyond M20 doing nominal mix will not be accurate. Okay, so you will have to probably you will have to design the mix. Okay, so these aspects then batching, mixing, and all these things you would have how to place the concrete, compaction conditions, and probably some criteria with respect to testing you might have seen in concrete technology. So everything beyond that from section 3 you might not have seen yet. So some of these things I have already covered in the PPT. For example, methods of design, meaning limb state method and the working stress method, the things which are actually there. So I think that will come in design volume set. No, yeah. So this is what is there discussed in methods of design, design process. Then what are the loads that you have to take when doing a concrete design? For example, I told you what are dead loads, what are imposed loads. Okay, and under combination of loads, what you do? Okay, how you change the partial factor, safety factor, and all those things. So all these things would be discussed over here. And some other things like stability, we will not be dealing with this, but anyway, it's also, so somebody who wants to do it, probably if we doing a tall building, somebody wants to check the stability, then they can adopt these provisions. They can check these provisions rather. Fire resistance, and then some requirements are given in this analysis part. Okay, for example, if you want to find the so this part I think I covered in the previous class PPT. So how do you find effective span? And then we also saw moment and shear coefficients. Okay, so 1/16, 1/10 for interior span. For exterior span, it is some other coefficient. Okay, so these things are all discussed. How to actually proceed with the analysis given a structure. So some tips and shortcuts related to that are given in this part. Then proper dimensioning and proportioning of the beams, how you do. Similarly for slabs, compression members, how do you actually decide what kind of a compression member it is. So based on your mechanics of solids, if you have a column, what are the ways in which a column can fail?
Compression and buckling.
Yeah, compression and buckling. Okay, I mean it's compression, so it can either fail entirely because of the compression itself, or the compression can cause buckling otherwise. So these are
torsion.
Torsion will be usually for beams, not for. If torsion comes, you would probably consider that as a separate case rather than just a column.
So like due to lateral force, there will be a lot of lateral force in column will try to torsion.
No, there will be what?
Like due to lateral force,
Uh,
there will be an effect of torsion and column.
See, that's what that can happen, but when you technically speaking, when you do the design, you don't say that as a column design. Okay, so design for a torsion member is considered as a separate design. Okay, you may, so if there is a column which is having torsion, you have to check it for compression. Separately, you have to check it for torsion. Okay, so actually from design point of view, everything is viewed separately. Okay, unless otherwise specified that one causes some influence on the other, and therefore you will treat everything in an interactive way. Okay, interactive in the sense compression interacts with torsion, etc. So those things are separate. Those are a bit advanced. I don't want to go into that now. So, so requirements related to compression members. Then regarding the reinforcement, how to space it, how much bars to give, what the sizes of the bars, and now all these kind of things are given over here. Then section 4 is you will not be using section 4 much in this course. Okay, except the only thing which is there in your syllabus relevant to section 4 is flat slabs and flat slab staircases and footings. Okay, so these are some you know, but specific structural members. Okay, flat slabs usually I teach, but this time since we started 2 weeks late, a flat slabs is something that I will probably mostly skip this for your batch. I'll be probably skipping this flat slab, so I will not be including it because we started late. No other reason. Staircases also I will not teach it, but it's compared to flat slabs, you need to learn quite a few concepts before you can actually go to flat slabs. So therefore, I'm omitting this. Staircases is not like that. It can be learned easily if you know how to design a slab. Okay, so staircases I will give you as a reading and problem assignment, which you learn by yourself and do. Footings, of course, I'll teach. Then your main part is how to actually carry out limit state design method. Okay, so all these things, limit state of collapse, limit state of serviceability, partial safety factors, characteristic and characteristic loads, design values, and all these things I have already told you what these things are. So if somebody wants to do limit state of collapse with in flexure, meaning a beam, okay, what are its assumptions? You'll also have all these equations which we derived. Okay, so similarly for compression members, if it's a short compression member, what will you do? How will you, if it's a circular member with helical movement, what do you do? If it is axial plus bending, what you do? If it's axial load plus biaxial bending, what do you do? So all these provisions are given here. Similarly, how do you design for shear? How do you design for torsion? How do you check deflection? Okay, so all these things are provided to you in section 5 of the code book. So section 5 and section 3. Okay, these are the two main parts of the code book which you will be using in this course. Okay, for your design purpose, and there are some useful appendices also. If there's a working stress based problem you want to do, if you see in IS 456, working stress method comes in annex. The main part of the code book is limit state method. Okay, so this is a main point to note about this code book. So if somebody wants to do, wants something information related to working stress method, you have to look at the annex. Okay, then two-way slabs is something you'll be using. That you'll be how to. I'll come to what a two-way slab is later. And of course, all these. See, we derived some equations. No, 0.36 FCKB into XU to D minus 0.416 XU and all those things. If somebody does not remember that equation, he doesn't know what that equation is. He forgot it. He or she forgot it. Just come to Annex G. Those equations will be given there. Okay. So this is the outline of your code book. So now I'll go back to my PPT where I will be sharing some cutouts from this code book to just discuss the main features, main requirements for limit state design. So all these things are there in code book. What are the things that I'm going to show you now? Okay, so please see, for example, I showed you one table in the last classroom. So this is where I took it from. Okay, all those things are taken from IS 456. Okay, similarly, effective span. See, effective span. So I gave you some things like clear span plus effective depth of the beam, etc. So this is where it's given clear span plus effective depth of the beam. Okay. It's given over here. So this is how you have to use the code book. So I just wanted to introduce this code book to you. Henceforth, it is up to you to actually, whenever you are doing a design problem, keep your code book with you and then refer the relevant provisions, okay, which are there. Of course, I'll tell you what these provisions are right now. So those who do not have IS 456, please download it. It's freely downloadable. I'll move back to my PPT. So based on the code book which I showed you, I'll just run through some important provisions which you need for design. This we saw in last class itself. How to find the effective span of beams in order to find your bending moment. Okay, WL square by 8. What is the L that you use? It should be the effective span of your beam. Similarly, if it's continuous beam, this is how you find your effective span for using the length in the analysis. Then cover requirements. This is also taken from IS 456. Effective span I told you. No, largely it is effective span plus clear span plus effective depth. If it's a T-shaped beam, then the breadth of your flange has to be, this is known as effective breadth of flange. So do we have a T-beam anywhere? Picture. So when we come to T-beam design, you will be using this formula that time. Anyway, it's these versions are also present in I think 22.3 or something. Okay, 22.3 or 22.4. So you'll have these provisions. You can use them that time. These things I told you. If you have continuous spans of either beams or continuous slab systems, whatever they are. So this is how you decide to find your bending moments in each of those spans. End span, interior span, end support, interior support, and all these things. This is the coefficient that you use. So for example, if you have a dead load W, okay, and you have a live load WLL, something like this. So if you want to find at the middle interior span, if you want to find out what is the bending moment, you'll do WL square by 16 plus WL square by 12 for the live load. So it's basically that coefficient into WL square. Okay. So either either you take the total load WL into L or WL square, whatever it is. Factor obviously, if it's dead load 1.5, live load 1.5. If it's in combination with wind load, you'll use 1.2 and all these things. So now this thing this is new, not covered in the last class. So in general, if you remember, we talked about the two limit states. What are the two limit states? Limit state of what and limit state of another thing what?
Moment and deflection. Deflection.
Moment and deflection are two parts of something. What is that? It's in the code book I showed you. Open. If anybody is having IS 456.
Collapse and serviceability.
Collapse and? Collapse is one. Another one? Serviceability. Okay, open the code book, you have your answer. Section 5, the first 5.1, it will state those two words, limit state of collapse, limit state of serviceability. Okay, so moment, flexure, torsion, compression, shear, all these things these are forces, okay, which cause failure of your beam or column or anything. So these, since these are related to actual structural collapse and failure, these are known as limit state of collapse. Limit state of serviceability means it causes problems, but it will not. It is not necessary that your structure or element will collapse or fail. Okay, it will just become. It will just become bad. That's it. So one of that is deflection. Deflection is a limit state of serviceability. It's not a limit state of collapse. So in general, there is one principle. whenever you do a design for a beam or column or whatever it is, you will design that particular thing for collapse. Okay. For example, if you have a beam, you will design it for its bending moment, decide its depth, decide its reinforcement, check everything under reinforcement, do the design entirely, and then once you see that the design is done properly, later what they will do is they will just check whether deflection is okay. There are deflection limits. Okay, I have deflection limits. Okay, if it's not there, I'll show you to the end of the class. A beam or a column or whatever it is has to have its deflection within a certain limit. For example, you have a uniformly simply supported beam with UDL. What is the formula for deflection at the center? Maximum deflection. Or if you don't remember that, what is it for a simply supported beam with central concentrated load? Whichever you remember, tell that formula. Deflection formula. Certain deflection formula you have to remember. Okay. Like how do you remember WL square by 8? No. Similarly, you will also have to remember deflection formula as well. So what is the deflection at the center? Anybody remembers?
So for quantum it's PVT with 188 and then UD it's 5 or 1 by 384 W.
5 by?
5 by 384 W.
Then 5 by 384 what?
WL power 4 by because it's UD.
Yeah. So for simply supported beam with UDL, the deflection at the center is given by 5 WL power 4 by 384 E8. So L will be power 4. So you will get a deflection some number, some millimeters. So you will have to make sure that deflection is, for example, according to IS 456, if it is a beam, that deflection should be lesser than length by 300, length of the beam by 300. Like this, you have several deflection limits. So after you design the beam for bending moment, you will ensure that this design beam is having a deflection lesser than this value L by 300. Okay. So this is known as controlling deflection. Okay. So many times when you initially decide the beam, you may not know. See, for example, some beams, if you make it may have very less load. So you may give it a very less depth and design it for bending moment. Then when you check it for deflection, you may find that it is exceeding the deflection limit which is allowed. So many times it is not very easy to judge prior to your design what should be the depth or size of the beam so that deflection is not exceeded. So for that convenience, there are some thumb rules or some provisions that you can use to initially decide the effective depth ratios, span to effective depth ratio, the span of the beam. Okay, the full span of the beam, not the effective span. The full span of the beam divided by effective depth of the beam, what it should be. Okay, this is a good starting criteria for designing your beam. For example, if you have a simply supported beam of length maybe 10 meters. Okay, you have a simply supported beam of length 10 meters. So according to this criterion, you have basic span to effective depth ratio for a simply supported beam should be 20. Span to effective depth. Okay. Now span will be given to you in the problem. That is what you have to design for. Load will be given. Depth will not be given to you in the problem. Okay, because you are designing the beam. Okay, you have to decide it. What should be the depth of the beam? So many times you'll be wondering, what should I take for the depth? Okay, so you can start with this. Okay, span to effective depth says 20. Okay, so let me say 10 is too much. Say 5 meter beam. 5 meter beam, the span to effective depth should be 20. Okay, so 5 by D or 5000 in millimeters means it's 5000. 5000 by D is equal to 20. Okay, that is what you get. So what will you get for effective depth in that case? 5000 by D equals 20. You will get D equals
250.
huh?
250.
250. So 250 is So 250 is a start. This is the minimum depth that you have to give for this beam, and how this is decided. So it is generally shown that if your depth becomes lesser than 250, even in case the moment is being taken, your beam will not satisfy deflection. Most probably, it is not exact. This is just most probable. Okay. So sometimes you may want to modify it depending on the grade of steel that you use. Okay, so these numbers that you have here, 7, 20, 26. So all these things you can, depending on what percentage of reinforcement you are given to the beam, you can slightly modify it. Instead of 20, you may do it 20 into 1.6 or 20 to 2, or 2 is too much. Most probably sometimes you may modify it between 1.2 and 1.5. Depend at the end, depending on what percentage of reinforcement that you have actually given. Okay, so you modify it by this number Fs. What this number Fs is? Fs is this 0.58 Fy into area of cross section of steel required by area of cross section steel provided. So in the sense, like, for example, you do the beam design, you find out that you require 800 mm square of steel. You are not able to provide 800 mm square, so you give, say, 950 mm square, 942 mm square. So 3 numbers of 20 mm bar will be 942 mm square. So 800 by 942, some ratio is there. So that ratio to 0.8 into Fy, you see what it is, and you look at it over here, and then based on that number, you can just modify your number and check. Sometimes, just to make it economical, sometimes people will do that, but mostly for your case, it's not necessary. Okay, unless you have a very heavy case where the depth of the beam is coming 800 mm or something like that, very large load, and you don't want to give 800 mm for a serviceability criterion alone. So you may want to find a way to reduce it, then you can just take this and reduce. So that's why some extra positions are given. And if you give compression reinforcement in addition to tension reinforcement, then you have another modification factor, which depends on your the percentage of compression reinforcement. So similarly, this is for beams. Similarly, for slabs also you have a effective span to depth ratios. So for beam it is 20 and 26. Here it is little bit more, 35 or 40, like that. Okay. So then requirements governing the reinforcement and detailing. So in general, there is something known as development length. Let me see if I have a picture. So development length is okay. It's better I show a picture. Right? It's difficult to explain what development length is. Okay, are you able to see my browser now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so see, this is what is development length. Usually, so you may have a beam and you're giving it reinforcement. Okay, so what is the purpose of reinforcement? Purpose of reinforcement is to resist the tensile stresses in that in that location of the beam. Okay, the tensile stresses which are caused by bending. Okay, so in simple, what they say is, so for example, if this is where your beam is ending. Okay, it is ending at this junction between the. Are you able to see my cursor? That finger pointer kind of thing.
Yes, sir.
Visible? No. Okay, fine. So this is where your beam actually ends, but because the beam ends here, you cannot stop your reinforcement here. Okay, if you stop your reinforcement here, the principle is like if wherever your beam starts, the reinforcement starts, it does not mean that the reinforcement will take the entire. It will start taking the entire stress from the beginning itself. Okay, so for the reinforcement to start taking the actual stress which it is supposed to take, it requires some distance. Okay, so if at the edge of the beam the stress will be 0, at the edge of the reinforcement stress taken will be 0, then it gradually builds up as the distance along the reinforcement goes. So if you stop your reinforcement at the junction, then at this location the steel will be practically useless. It will not be taking any stress. So for that, what they say is, if you want your reinforcement to start taking stress from this point, you need to extend the reinforcement a little more earlier than that. So usually, for example, in a beam column junction, they will not stop the reinforcement at the beam. They will take it inside the column, bend it up, and give it for a certain distance. So whether it is the top reinforcement or whether it's the bottom reinforcement. Okay, so this extra length which you need to provide so that the reinforcement builds up the stress which it is supposed to take. That length is known as development length, usually given by L subscript D. So this is what is development length. So you can actually see it even if this is not a good image. Okay, this itself is better. So usually, yeah. So you can see over here, this is how it will be, and this is the main bar. Instead of stopping at the column reinforcement, it is going in and going down for a certain distance. So this is what is development length. I just wanted to say that, so that without that you will not understand what is development length. That's why I showed that. So coming back to this. So you know now what is development length, and generally how to find the development length. You can find it by this formula: phi sigma s by 4 into tau BD, where phi is the diameter of the bar, sigma s is bond stress. Bonding. So because we have concrete, we have steel, there is some bonding between them, and bond stress means if you exceed that stress, the bond between concrete and reinforcement will go. Then it does not function like reinforced concrete itself. So unless there is bonding between concrete and steel, even if you give reinforcement, it is not reinforced concrete. It is reinforcement separately, concrete separately. So you have to have proper bonding between steel and concrete. So the bond stress, or the stress above which the bond breaks, so that is given by this table for different grades of concrete. So this is tau BD. Okay, and sigma is the stress in the steel, okay, which you have provided. So depending on that, you can decide what is the development length that you should have. So there's something known as curtailment. Please have a study of it through your code book. Curtailment means the word. What is the meaning of curtail? English meaning? What is the English meaning of curtail? Literal meaning?
Stop or avoid something.
Stop. So basically, sometimes what happens is, for example, you have a simply supported beam with centrally concentrated load. Where is the load? Where is the bending moment maximum? I'll try to draw it in beam. Where is the bending moment maximum in a simply supported beam with concentrated load?
The point of application.
The point of application. So what is the shape of the bending moment diagram?
Triangle.
Triangle. So probably you have shape like this. Okay, you have maximum moment here. 0 are the supports. So what is the purpose of giving tension reinforcement? It is basically to take the tensile stress caused by the moment. So because of that, when I talk about the tensile stress in the beam, where will the tensile stress be maximum? Along the length of the beam?
At
So
the point
that's,
of application.
yeah, I mean where the maximum bending moment is. So if this is the length, if this is my beam, okay, probably in this region, I will have a good amount of bending moment, and in the remaining region my bending moment may be a little bit less. So my design is based on this. I would have found some value of area of steel. Okay, this area of steel is for this bending moment. It is not necessary that I have to give the same reinforcement even in this region or in this region. Okay, so for example, if somebody says for this bending moment I need 3 numbers of 20 diameter bars. So somebody, if they want to be very economical, actually for normal construction nobody will do this. For heavy constructions, let's say that, let me take a much bigger, better, worst case. Say somebody says I need 5 numbers of 20 members. Okay, 5 numbers of 20 members. So sometimes people will think that no, why to give 5 mm 20 members for the entire length like this, because there is not much bending moment in this region. So what they'll do is, let me stop my 5 numbers within this region itself. For the remaining part over here and here, they will cut 2 bars, and beyond that you will have only 3 bars. Okay, after cutting 2 bars at this location, 2 of the bars will be cut, and till the end only 3 bars will continue. So that is known as curtailment, okay, of tension reinforcement. So whenever you curtail tension reinforcement, if you decide that you want to curtail over, if you are curtailing for this bending moment at this location, you cannot cut exactly here. You will have to make sure you give development length, and from that development length you can cut. Okay, so that is the principle of curtailment. So just study about it. You can look at Krishna Raju book, which I have uploaded. You can also look at the code book, okay, and see how curtailment is done. I may not be asking problems on curtailment which require you to do curtailment, but it's still good for you to know what is curtailment, how it is done, because if you later go into design, many places you will see that they will show cross section of the beam at different locations, and you will have different reinforcement. You should not get confused, like, no, it's the same beam, how is the reinforcement looking different in different places, different sections. So it's better to know what is curtailment. Okay, and splice means basically joining to reinforcement. So for example, if you have a very long a column, for example, so a column is so many meters tall, and you're giving the reinforcement. So one single reinforcement may not go for the entire distance. So you may want to join reinforcement at certain locations. So that is known as splicing. So the requirements related to splicing are also provided in this part. You can have a look at it. Okay, so let's come to the more commonly used requirements. So this is the minimum distance between individual bars. Okay, so for example, 5 numbers or 20 mm bars. What is the minimum spacing you should give between each bar? Okay, so whenever you give the reinforcement, when you're doing design, when you're giving the reinforcement, you should make sure that 2 bars are not very close to each other. Okay, so as a follow-up question, I can ask you, if you have 2 reinforcement or any number of reinforcements which are which are spaced very closely to each other, what practical problems come? The hint is there in point number 3. If some reinforcements are very closely spaced, what is the practical problem that will be faced? Hint is there in point number 3.
So the course aggregates won't settle in that region.
Won't settle in the sense what? No, won't settle means what do you
We
mean?
will not be able to place the bar at all, like inside. We will not be able to pour the concrete around it. It may like separate the coarse aggregates from the concrete because there is no space for the coarse aggregates to move through it.
Okay, fine. Yeah, certainly not exactly, but it's related to that. So basically, when you the process is first mold of the beam will be made, reinforcement will be placed, only then concrete will be poured. Okay. So when you pour the concrete, if the reinforcement is placed very closely, then there's a problem that the aggregate will not be able to go to the bottom. It will be blocked by the reinforcement. Okay, you will not be able to place and compact your concrete properly if it is congested like this, very closely placed reinforcement. It's a problem of congestion. Okay, so this is how you decide the spacing. The horizontal distance between two parallel main reinforcement bars shall not be less than the greatest of the following. Okay, one is the diameter of the bar if all the diameters are equal. Diameter of the larger bar if the diameters are unequal. Okay, for example, if I have two numbers of 20, one number of 16, so in that case you have to, then it becomes 20 mm, the one which you use, distance you use. And then other than that you have about 5 mm more than the nominal maximum size of the coarse aggregate. So if you have 20 mm aggregates which you have used, then 25 mm, so 25 mm we have to make sure that the spacing is there. Okay, size plus 5. So these are minimum distances. Usually this will be very less, like if you calculate based on this, usually you'll get distances like 25 mm, 28 mm, 30 mm like this only. Even that is actually pretty less, and nobody will adopt such distances. So usually people will try to adopt at least about 50 mm or more than that spacing between bars, center to center distance of the bars. Okay. So that is something which should be known. There is also maximum distance. Okay. So converse to this, so for minimum distance you told me that concrete will not go inside. If the distance is too much, what is the problem? Spacing is too much between the bars.
Majority of the concrete will flow through that section.
Okay, so the concrete is? No, concrete is what? I didn't hear.
The majority of the concrete will flow through that section, and the concentration of concrete will be greater in one section, which is favored by the gravity flow, sir. Suppose if we are pouring from top.
Okay, there will be a lot of concrete in that section. That's okay, but is it a problem if it happens?
So there are any uniform stress sheet flow.
It won't be uniform. Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Okay, uniform. Okay, if it's too far, uniformity will not be there. That's right. Fine. But again, so what? Is it a problem? Okay, so generally this is okay. You may not guess this. Simply only I asked that. What happens is usually when a beam is bending, if you remember when I showed you over-reinforced beam and under-reinforced beam picture some many classes back, for under-reinforced beam, how did the crack look? From where to where was the crack going? Does anyone remember that picture?
Bottom of the beam towards the
Bottom
so
of
the crack will start happening at the bottom, and then it will slowly move upward.
It's going upward, right? So when you have generally what it's observed is, if you have optimally placed reinforcement at the bottom, when this crack starts at the bottom, there is a good probability that the crack will encounter a reinforcement. Okay, because you have clear cover and the reinforcement is coming above the clear cover. So at the bottom of the beam, the crack will start. Okay, again maybe I can use the pen to be much more clear. Okay, so if you have a beam like this, okay, say some reinforcement are there. Here. Some reinforcement. So say the crack starts somewhere here. The crack is starting. So if you have optimally spaced reinforcement, there's a good probability the crack will actually go and hit one of these reinforcements. And the reinforcement, unlike concrete, it cannot be opened up. Okay. If a crack encounters a reinforcement, the crack will stop there. Okay, it will have to find a way around the reinforcement in order to proceed up, which is not such an easy thing to do for the crack. Going around the reinforcement it's an extra. It requires more energy to do that. So if you have properly spaced reinforcement, it will actually arrest your cracking a bit. To an extent, of course, if you load it too much, it will go around the reinforcement and it will crack. But To an extent, it will arrest the cracking. So unless the spacing of the crack is great, shows that a gray thick spacing is acceptable, following rules shall be applied to the flexible members for getting maximum spacing. Okay, so if you read this, it says it is something related to the crack width. Okay, so in order to ensure that this is not bad, you have to ensure that the maximum distance between the bars does not exceed a certain limit, and that limit is given by this table. So in general, percentage redistribution from the section considered all, you can ignore all this minus 30, minus 15, plus 15, plus 30 and all. Ignore that. I don't want to go into how what those things are. You just say zero redistribution, okay, and you can just look at this space which you have to satisfy. So if it is mild steel, the maximum spacing that you can give between bars is 300 mm. If it's Fe415, 180, and if it's Fe500, it's only 150 mm. Okay. So these are this is the spacing within the bars which you can use for beams, and similarly for slabs, horizontal distance between the parallel bars shall not be more than 3 times effective depth of the solid slab, or 300 mm, whichever is smaller. So if you have a slab which is 100 mm depth, sorry, not 100, let's say 120 mm depth, 3 times that is 360. Then this is the 300 is there. The smaller of that is 300, so you have to make sure the spacing does not exceed 300 mm. If it is the main bar, if you are providing bars for sometimes people will provide bar for the purpose of shrinkage and temperature. So if it is that kind of a bar, then it is 5 times effective depth or 450. Okay, just different criteria which are given for the spacing, and the percentages of reinforcement, how much you should give. So if it's a beam, you should give minimum this much percentage of steel, given by 0.85 BD by Fy. So whenever you calculate AST, getting something mm square, you have to check whether it is at least equal to this much. Okay, if it's not equal to this much, then you have to provide at least this much. Then maximum reinforcement. So there's also a maximum percentage of reinforcement which you should not exceed. And this maximum percentage of reinforcement is not the same as PT limit. Okay, if you remember, we had discussed something known as PT limit. Okay, PT limit means it is the percentage of reinforcement which you should not exceed, so that the beam is under reinforced. Okay, the reason for PT limit is to make the beam under reinforced. Okay, so that is a different criterion. This is different. Okay, the maximum reinforcement which you are giving shall not exceed 0.04 times total area of the beam, B into capital D. So this criterion is not given for the purpose of making the beam under reinforced. It is for the purpose of avoiding congestion. Okay, this is a different reason for a maximum reinforcement. It is not the same as PT limit. Similarly, compression reinforcement also it's the same. Compression reinforcement in the sense it's not the top doubly reinforced beam. Top reinforcement. This is for beam. This is for column. That's the difference. So this is the maximum. You can remember it like this: the maximum reinforcement which you can give, either the top or bottom reinforcement which you can give, should not exceed 0.04 times the area of the beam. If it is a column, again, it should not exceed this much. Slabs you have again. So you have minimum. It should be at least 0.15 times the percentage of the total cross section of the slab, and the maximum diameter of the reinforcement bar in a slab should not exceed 1/8 of the total thickness of the slab. So, for example, if it is 120 mm bar, 120 mm slab, 1/8 of that is 15. So you can give a 12 mm bar, but you cannot give a 16 mm bar. Okay, so these requirements are there. And of course, then finally, if you go to Annex G, you have equations which you can use. Plan section I have not taught you yet, so I'll come to that. So all these equations, 0.36 FCK, X into B into B minus 0.16, all these equations will be given in this section, Annex G. So you can have a look at that section for rectangular sections as well as steel sections. Okay, you can also use SP16 for doing your design. First, you will be doing design with the actual analytical procedure. That is how you have to do it in your exam as well. But you should also know that it is possible to use tables to do design rather than actually calculating and doing equations and all those things. Okay, so this table you have already seen, that table on the top. You have used it for your stress, that iteration process. And similarly, this you have over here maximum percentage of tensile PT limit for single reinforced rectangular sections. Okay, so if you want to check whether your PT is lesser than the PT limit, you can use this table, depending on the FCK and depending on the grade of steel. And similarly, for the purpose of design, you will be using these equations. Mu equals some constant times FCK BD square, depending on the grade of steel. So this thing is coming. So go back to your previous one. Once I share the PPT, you can see it. So I told you that if you replace, if Mu is equal to 0.36 FCK BD into, sorry, FCK BXU into B minus 0.416 XU. So I told you that you can replace, instead of XU, you can replace that equation for XU, 0.87 Fy ESD by 0.86. So if you make that replacement, you'll get a equation in terms of some constant. So that is how you get this. And you can just, so for the purpose of actually determining the depth and breadth of the beam, this will be used. When we do the problem, you'll be more familiar with this. This I have told you. So like this in SP16, you'll have a lot of charts and a lot of tables. Both are equivalent. So somebody says you want to design a beam for this much, what to say, for this much moment. Okay, then you will calculate Mu by FCK BD square. You'll get a certain number. Then pick out that number from this chart. That will give you what is the effective depth and what is the percentage of reinforcement you need for the depth. Alternatively, you can use the same thing you can get by using tables. Okay, so both procedures I'll discuss to you when doing problems. Similarly, doubly reinforced sections and flange sections also you have tables. This also, once we do the problem, I'll tell you. Okay, so I'll start this for today's class. And tomorrow we'll do some design problems so that you get more familiar with the processes which have been taught right now. So I will not take any questions today. Okay, because I just discussed provisions of the code book. Open the code book. Open also SP16. See what is there. Okay, that is your task for today. So just go through both the code books. Go through IS 456 section 3. Go through section 5. Go through Annex B. Go through Annex G. Just don't. I'm not asking you to read it entirely and memorize it or something like that. Just turn the pages. Just turn the pages. Look at it. What is there? Similarly, just open SP16. Turn the pages. Look what is there. Okay, this is the task that I'm giving you. And tomorrow we'll have some problems. Okay, so I'll stop with this. I'll end the meeting. So I'll meet you tomorrow. Okay, goodbye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.